I am by no means someone who's a big tough dog when it comes to scary things. I get jump scared, I hide behind my hands if possible, and I overthink the situation at hand even when I'm not the person directly behind the screen playing or watching what's going on. Long story short, I'm a huge scaredy cat, and I'm proud to say that. Not knowing this info, you can imagine how I was during a recent playthrough that I did personally in my free time of Faith, the Unholy Trinity. And well, it went as good as you may have think it may have gone for someone in my position. I have been wanting to play Faith for a good while now, because the way it looked really is what got my eye. Pixel graphics or 8-bit in this day and age can be really well done if done right, and from what little I saw of Faith, it fit right into that category. The only other thing that I knew about Faith was that it's a horror game, and yeah. So going into it, well, on one hand, cool graphics, and on the other, I may end up screaming like a chicken without a head, so my playtime should have been a win-win, right? Well, that's what I'm about to tell you all here today. And before we really kick this thing off, I want to kind of clear up what this video is. It's not the typical video I usually post here about thoughts or feelings or whatever you want to call it on certain discussion points revolving around a topic or a show, anime, etc, etc. I will be walking you through my own playthrough of Faith while giving you what I was thinking or feeling at the time during certain segments. And again, this is a recap of basically my first playthrough, and I feel like this plays a very important role down the road, and I will retouch on that later. But for now, here is sort of my narration of my first playthrough of Faith, the Unholy Trinity. Chapter 1, The House. Off the bat, the unnerving feeling that I got starting up began at the loading screen, because I wasn't expecting voice acting in this game, let alone voice acting that sounded like R2-D2 talking to me while he's underwater. So we're off to an amazing start. Then starting off chapter 1, I had a horrible gut feeling about things here. We quickly learned that 1, the place we're starting off at is in a forest that has a quote mind of its own, which, okay, that's nice and all, but why? Why are we here? What exactly is this place? And what are we trying to do? These questions get answered somewhat in certain ways and very quickly pretty soon. In these gameplay points, you will see me being horrible at this game top to bottom. Also, when I learn that, hey, there are secrets when I hold my cross to things, that basically just caused me to almost hold my cross to anything possible. And then also off the rip, we also learned that we are priests, which, you hold up a cross and you're wearing robes. I'm pretty sure you could put one and one together, but I didn't for a little bit. Remember, kids, you're always gonna be smarter than me. But then we also quickly learned that we're doing the best thing possible that priests usually do. An exorcism. Great, just great. The gameplay is pretty simple. You move and hold your cross up to find these secrets, but also repel things or damage things. This is very simple but effective. Going through, I quickly learned that there is more to this area that we are in. 1, there are these horrifying things you may have seen GIFs about online if you are around certain segments of the horror genre, and you kind of notice these like GIFs, which I always thought were just like fan made, but they're real. They're in this game, and their presence, you notice them pretty quickly, just based off the simple fact that they distort the audio whenever they're nearby, which again, this is wonderful. I love every bit of this so far. The first time I ran into one, I almost pissed myself and jumped out of my seat because it shocked me, and I loved it because I'm a masochist. Next, we started finding notes in the forest that just makes that pit in my stomach even more deep. We learn of a family, but other people, more noticeably Amy and a set of twins, and it's pretty much thrown into our face that there are things wrong with the kids, but also this area as a whole, as there are people showing up unannounced. The kids themselves are acting up. Everything about this area and these people just isn't adding up. But more so, we learn about ourselves here. We are priests, but we were here before, and we failed the first attempt of this exorcism. Again, I was like, wonderful, right? This area has monsters. We failed an exorcism here, and worst of all, for some reason, we have returned here for who knows what at this particular time. So many other things we could be doing with our time, but we're here doing this. All of this eventually leads to me finding the house mentioning in the notes. Not only does it look old, but it's a place I wouldn't imagine stepping inside even if you paid me $100 billion. In the house, we piece more things together. We find some fun pictures around this place that are totally not creepy at all, unnerving notes, and best of all, more notes that lead us to what happened during the first exorcism. The most uneasy part for me during this time doesn't come from the notes or the pictures, or picture to be fair, that is the biggest red flag known to man, but a mirror in the bottom bedroom. When I played this, I thought it was something I could exercise with my cross, but well, it didn't work. And a reason why I thought I could exercise it was because the thing in the mirror didn't look like me, the character, and due to the figures not lining up, but also me piecing together that when I held up my cross, nothing happens in the mirror itself. Now, there's going to be some context here that I'm going to provide you all. I am in no shape or form a religious person. My grandparents were / are, and I usually learned things secondhand from them, but religion has never been a big part of my life personally. However, one of the things that my grandfather taught me, or well, explained to me, that was passed down to him from his previous parents and grandparents themselves, was a tale he told me about how souls can be trapped in mirrors, depending on if the soul is someone who passed in the location of the mirror, or said person passed without wanting to move on. And without offending anyone, I don't want to say more because A, it's not something that I know a ton about, but the story was the first thing I thought of when I saw this location and when I was exploring this mirror itself. Is someone or something on the other side of the mirror? Is it Amy, one of the twins? Or could it be me, the priest, on the other side? Is the character I'm playing right now stuck because he didn't complete the exorcism last year and he passed during it and is stuck in a loop that never ends because he has regret of what happened that fateful night? I didn't want to think about it too much because, well, it opens up a can of worms. And I'm being completely honest with you all. It's a can that I'm afraid to open. Exorcisms, for me, is a horrible thing to think about. The concept of a demon getting stuck into you is horrifying enough, even if you aren't a religious person at all. Moving past that, however, as we head towards the basement, this also leads to a point I haven't mentioned because it is here where I get really put off. And that's the audio of this game. Or well, lack of any at this particular point. To be completely honest with you, I don't know when exactly it stopped, because I remember hearing a track in the forest, but I believe that stopped once I got into the house. The reason why I'm bringing this up now is because, well, the basement leads us to where the first exorcism took place. And seeing upside down crosses make their way to you with an unnerving noise, and worst of all, animation in 8-bit of Amy being possessed, threw me for a loop. And usually when these segments play out, there's always a track with it, but there wasn't here unless my game was glitching. This leads to what I assume is the first boss fight, where markings follow you, so you need to point the cross at the markings which show Amy, then out of the 4 images that appear, you need to guess the right Amy. You need to do this 4 times, and then the attic will open. We get to have a somewhat talk with Amy, and so begins another boss fight. It follows the same format of crosses towards the symbol moving towards you, guess which one is right, get the right Amy, etc, etc. However, after doing some damage, Amy shows, well, she doesn't have a face, and well, an arm comes out of it. A very normal thing to happen nonetheless. I do beat Amy, and she leaves through a window? That's not something you see every day. As we leave the attic, there's a note that is nice, or very peculiar, I think is probably the best way to put it, because, you know, nothing has been roses here. Everything's been a flower field. And as I head down the stairs, there I am having a horrible time reading what's written in blood on the floor. Thanks, dyslexia. Glad you always have my back whenever I need you. Then, well, we have a gun with a notice saying you only have 1 bullet. However, before I do anything with that, I take a look at the old faithful mirror that I mentioned before. I wanted to test this theory I had out about souls and would you look at that? That old shadow figure is no longer there. But I'm genuinely interested to see if this is really the case. So I shot the mirror, and well, it doesn't break, and now I don't have a gun, till it just respawns in the next room over, and well, that note was a lie. There's apparently now more than 1 bullet, for now. And after a while, I break the mirror, and get dragged into an unknown room, but another boss battle begins, which in all honesty, this is really easy, but what this leaves us is with another note. But this time, it's a note from us. The note shows that, well, John clearly has been through a lot. I mean, look at what we're doing, but also raises more questions here. Because this could easily be read or alluded to us believing that John is in a mental hospital, or that everything happening is just all in our heads, which wouldn't be the craziest thing that happened to us yet so far, but I wish this was the case. We get sent back, and now with another gun, I make a beeline to my car in the hopes to find something, and well, I do. I shoot one of the creatures that has been following me in the woods and hurt it, and it walks into the middle of the road and, well, gets run over. We dip because, yeah, that's just a normal thing to be happening now. But the ending note we get is even more off-putting. The locals of this area believe that this animal to be the chupacabra, which is very odd, but at this point, I don't know what else will be thrown my way. And thus ends chapter 1, and was it something to say the least. At this point, I'm uneased, because like I said, I don't like anything involving exorcisms. It's one of those things that I truly believe, even if you're not religious like I am, it's a concept that is very horrifying to think about. But then on top of that, we are also having kids and demons and such involved as well. And because when you think of kids, you think of joy and happy things, not demon-like creatures. So we have the normal layout of what we perceive to be normal, and all of it's flipped on its head, which again is wonderful, right? Also, as much as I am creeped out, I do find this story very interesting. Will I learn more about what happened a year earlier? Will I find out what the odd message was after beating Amy? What exactly is going on in this crazy world right now? Little did I know at the time, I would be getting more questions and answers as we went along. But it was safe to say that I was hooked on Faith, the Unholy Trinity. Even though I was scared a lot, and I mean a lot, during this chapter alone, the way the story is being told, the simple gameplay, and the setting itself made me want to play more. But also find out more, which is something that should be recognized, because it's an amazing thing to do, to make a game that draws at your mind, but makes you want to keep coming back for more and more and more, no matter how horrible you are with horror. Chapter 2, A Nightmare. Chapter 2 starts us off as Father Garcia, and as we enter the living area, I assume we find the 3 pictures. First one is fine and dandy, and then the other 2 are, yeah, something isn't right here at all. Not by a long shot. As I head down the stairs, the figure that we saw in chapter 1 is here all chained up. And we learned that this is Michael. Through, once again, some very horrific means, but amazing voiceovers, we are trying to exorcise Michael. Things go wrong very quickly as I damn near have a heart attack because I can't see nothing. But I remember the layout of this area, and then I see Michael dip through the hallways, and as I move quickly through the apartment, we find Michael again having some nice chow time. And just like Amy, he leaps through a window. Again, nothing really should be surprising me too much now, but who knows? Now, this is where I get some sort of whiplash here because, one, I'm starting to realize that so far, and maybe this chapter, is going to be like a prelude to chapter 1 at the particular time that all these events were playing. Or maybe even the whole story as a whole. And that too, I realized that I may have killed Michael at the end of chapter 1. Piecing together too that Michael also was called the Chupacabra, but they were a person, and I just shot them and got them ran over by an 18-wheeler. Yeah, some great time to process all the info this game has just dumped on me. Well, at least I'm presuming it was Michael at this time. Now, we go back to John. And what I really like about this, and the reason why I figured out that we were John, is because in chapter 1 we were blue, and as obviously on screen, we are blue yet again. And thank goodness for this color coordinated help, because I need every bit of help I can get, as you all may know. Off rip, I assumed that we were back in the forest where we started, but quickly found out, yeah, that may in fact no longer be the case. Thanks to a note found in a very kind, friendly way, it seems that we are in the cemetery. Look, I get it, we're hitting all the boxes right now for horror, but on top of everything right now, a cemetery is probably the last place I would want to be at, just considering everything we have gone through at this time. Getting started is just some nice notes talking about everyone's favorite person, the devil. But we also find a somewhat similar note that comes too kind of close to the one that we found after beating Amy. However, the big difference here is it's signed by a person named Gary, or at this point it could be an entity. So at least right now we're putting a name to the person or thing that may be behind these horrible things happening around here. Then we enter the tomb and we meet some very nice shadow figures, at least 3 of them here. And then again, another amazing cutscene plays out. And yes, as it is both amazing, it is also very terrifying that we just look at ourselves smiling. And of course, holding up the cross, the 3 shadows fly out. After some looking around, I ran across one of the shadows and beat it in a boss fight. It was pretty easy, I might add. However, what isn't easy is the note left behind after beating this said shadow. At this time, this note sticks out a lot for me, because we quickly find out that this was a child. A child has got sucked up into all of this, and we can only imagine what happened to their poor soul to lead to this point. Or well, maybe we do know what happened to them. We just exorcised a shadow, and it just so happened that said note dropped from said shadow. I then decided I wanted to try the other side of the cemetery, I guess this is what we will call it now. And I continued doing my fun time exploring and doing some dumb fooling around until we find another cool and nice note. This note, however, just like everything else that has been happening right now, is kind of a twist. The parents in the first chapter that were mentioned have passed on, but also tells us that Amy and the twins lived. However, this wasn't the oddest part of it all. The thing that stuck out to me is the closed casket part. Now, I do know for some religions, this is the norm. However, knowing what we know about everything, I don't think that was the case here. What in the world happened to these parents to warrant a closed casket? We open up a gate to figure out this is another boss area. However, this one took me some time because I'm awful at video games in my very, very, very old age. But after beating it, we get another new note. Again, another note that I'm almost dumbfounded by. Of course, once reading this note, the design of the shadow hits kind of different. Or more so, at the time of me fighting this boss, all I could think of is like, what's that red thing at the bottom? And then you read the note and slowly realize what happened. This poor person went through something probably horrendous, right? But again, we exorcised someone that was in great distress. And at least I believe they were trapped. Or, well, I'm telling myself this to kind of help me get over what I have just done. But another thing this note alludes to, or well, mentions, is Gary again. Still, at this point, I'm still unsure if Gary is a person or still an entity at this point. Because the way these notes are lining up and the way these people are talking about Gary himself or itself, it could be either one. Either one of these is a very strong possibility at this time. I then make my way over back to the other side of the cemetery to try and find the last shadow. I needed to figure out a puzzle, and I like to believe I have at least a normal IQ, I think. But this puzzle, for some reason, took me a while to figure out because I couldn't for the life of me figure out the last statue or what the last statue meant. After smacking my last 2 brain cells together, we fight another shadow boss. This one is on the easier side of things, but the puzzle really makes up for that. And again, once we beat him, another note appears. However, comparing this note to the other ones, it's nothing too outright sad, but it alludes to someone slowly going crazy, and to them, much more seemed to have happened to what was listed. Now going back to where this cemetery begins, I was going to head up north to see what I assumed was another area, but then I remembered that there were only 3 shadows inside the tomb that needed to be beaten, so why was there another area? So instead, I go back into the tomb, and again, I see John in the mirror. Again, man, this game loves its mirrors. But this time, we have the pleasure of putting the cross right up into our own eye socket, which then turns into a key. Yes, a key. Do you think this happens in real life if you try it? Please, please don't try this. And for some reason, if you think there's a key behind your eye, go to the doctor and get yourself checked out for your safety and everyone else's around you. Now that we're bleeding all over the place, I head to the top part and realize I wouldn't have been able to access this area if I didn't go into the tomb. So yeah, I guess I did something right here, or at least I hope. Then next I see a tree just running away, which at this point I feel like I've seen everything. So what's a tree running away really gonna do for me? Well, that's till I go to the next area, and then everywhere there's just trees here. Just trees. It was nothing in this particular area, but again, the game is playing jokes on you, which I love. It's making me double think everything I do, everything I see, and making sure that I pay attention to almost everything that I've come across, which I'm enjoying very much, rather, even though it is causing me a fair amount of stress and anxiety at this point. Now we get to a new church and see something running away, and yet again, another note, written in the same format that Gary has been writing to or about. We go into the church and find another note that basically tells us this church isn't what meets the eye. But also, normal people were looking into the matter themselves. Not sure if we can really call anybody normal in this game anymore, but I digress. At first, I really didn't know what to think or do, besides looking around to find like notes or find something that could help me get out of this area or find out what exactly I'm here for. We do end up finding notes that implies that the people that were looking into the church failed very badly. I find a confession room, which we learn more about John, what he fears, and what he has done after failing Amy. But what's really off-putting is the other voice that's inside the confession booth with us. No one is here besides us. And not only that, from what little I know about religion, this person who is pretending to be God on the other side of the confession booth wouldn't be asking us to do these things they are asking. So why is John, a priest, blindly accepting this? Behind the confession booth is another note, but it's nothing too crazy. It's just letting us know that on night 1, there was something that was caught, but nothing else about that. Exploring the area again, I find the quote demon that was hiding inside the church, but it makes easy work of me very quickly. Again, everyone's favorite gamer here. I was kind of trying to figure out how things worked here, but as you may all know, reading isn't my strong suit. So after realizing the candles indicate the room in which this demon thing is hiding in, I head to it, and I'm somewhat able to beat the boss fairly, not easy, but in a fairly decent time this time around. And then once beating the boss, the basement opens up. Nothing better than a haunted church that has been known to take children away into its basement, and that so-called basement just so happens to open up and welcomes us into it. Nothing better whatsoever. I wouldn't have wanted this any other way. Going into the basement, we learned we weren't the only ones to make it this far. And after moving forward, we really aren't alone here. And after a while trying to figure out what exactly I'm supposed to do here and figure out things, and of course I never died here, not once, but after figuring out the puzzle, I'm greeted with the nicest quote I've seen all game long. Mother of the demons. Nothing is better than this. I did a double take when we left through an outhouse, which honestly made me laugh, because of all things that could have happened, us leaving an outhouse is insane. What isn't funny though is the next note we find. This note has a lot in it. First, my fear is somewhat proven in this note, I guess is the best way to put it. The 3 shadows that we've beaten before have passed on. Amy has passed on, and John is believed to be the person that has killed Amy. But there's also this. These killings have been happening for a while now. But as we continue this note, the music picks up, and so does my heart rate. But that's not the best part. The note is something else. It changes as we continue to read it. Words are all messed up, they're all over the place. There's upside down crosses, and the line, "I'm here, John," appears. Now, I would be lying if I told you, hell yeah, let's pack up this Gary thing, person, whatever we're calling it, and let's go kick his butt and continue with this game. But this was the first time I felt the most unease in this whole time. Sure, to this point, there's been a lot of bad stuff read. There's been a lot of challenges and unsettling moments. But the particular part of "I'm here, John" is very, very disturbing. Another animation plays, and to say I was confused would be a very good understatement, I believe. And what took me a bit to realize what exactly I was trying to do, or how do I continue, we go into a normal candy tunnel. After everything, I don't know what exactly I should be looking for or looking at. Can I even play as John anymore after that brief intermission of whatever that was? And note, let us know that people are dying in this tunnel. And I probably could have told you that without a newsletter, but here we are, admiring some awesome graffiti, and found once again this tunnel is more than meets the eye. But again, a 2-year-old probably could have told you that themselves. More exploring leads me to another boss area. I'm just calling anything I need to fight a boss cause that's what it feels like at this particular point. However, this wasn't a boss. I'm just stupid. Again, after looking around at this wonderful, peace-loving area and getting scared, filled with joy, I found a new area. And if anyone was in John's shoes right now, they probably would have turned around. Heck, I would have moved to a different country after the Amy situation. But hey, here we are. The worst part about this is after finding the flashlights, all the music stops. This music has caused me more stress than I would like to admit. But no music going into this nice little convenient place was sending me on edge. Anything that moved, my cross was up. Anything odd that I see, my cross was to it. Anything at all that just wasn't in my particular liking, I put my cross up. And then the thing scared the living-ish out of me, or anything that could have scared me, I threw my cross up while almost dying to do so. Now, not only is this thing here, or whatever you want to call this at this time, there are also 2 purple things as well, which at the time I presumed were the twins that were mentioned before. Even though I don't know this conclusively, I just assumed they were twins because they were 2 purple figures and they were young. However, upon beating this, nothing drops, which at this particular time of me going through all this, it's one of the only times this actually happens when you defeat an enemy, which could be a good thing or could be the worst thing imaginable. We have yet to see that. As we return to the surface, we are greeted with another thing running, which at this point is a very normal Tuesday afternoon for us. And then going into the fun tunnel where the fun thing ran into, we see more things. But once again, the music cuts off. Great. Just great. It does come back on in the next room, but after reading the note on the floor, I would have rather it have stayed off, if I'm being honest with you. Because screw this. What do you mean it's scared of light? What exactly is scared of light? I'm on the edge yet again, and to be honest with you all, I did my best to speedrun this area as much as I could. I think my last 2 brain cells worked triple overtime trying to process all the rooms and figure out how to move forward as quickly as possible. But boy, these things didn't make it easy. Eventually I figured it out, and another animation plays, and Father Garcia saves us. And yay, finally, another person is here to help us through this crazy endeavor. I am tasked with helping protect him while he confirms to us that Amy has passed on at this point, and people blame us for it. Now what you're about to see is probably up there as some of the dumbest things I have ever done, said, or ever will do here on this channel. I've said things that may be dumb to you. You've seen my gameplay, which leads to me showing a lot of dumb things I've done. But I was under the assumption that this was one of those event things where, you just watch things play out. It wasn't. You were actually supposed to be doing something here. I let Father Garcia die without blinking an eye. Granted, I didn't have much of a harder time with this boss. I'm actually kidding. It actually took me a lot longer, and it was actually a lot harder than what I'm telling you all. Because, well, another person was probably supposed to be helping me here, but, because of my very lapse of judgment, that wasn't happening. And I'm just a huge idiot. This boss battle was actually a challenge and took time. At least that's what I'm telling myself to help me cope with what I've done. After beating it, another great animation plays, and we awake back home. Or at least I'm assuming this is our home. We learn some more info about John, but also there's a room he won't go into for some reason. Also, Father Garcia left us a note somehow. More importantly, he let us know that they are watching us. The chapter comes to a close as John is basically at an all-time low. He believes saving the boys, or the twins, will be what helps him. But before it all cuts off, someone in red is following us. Is this the day Father Garcia told us about? Chapter 2, for as much stress and anxiety it caused me, it was actually very fun. And by fun, I mean an absolute nightmare to get through, because of said stress and anxiety. Nonetheless, we got some answers to things, but probably ended up with more questions than ever. Is it alright for us to continue to be playing as John? Amy is assumed to be dead, but we have just saw her. Yeah, she doesn't have a face anymore, but she was there with bodies. So what exactly is happening here? Which, again, should be the biggest theme of this all. What in the world is happening here? Gary seems to be the one pulling the strings, but is he a part of the they are talking about, or what we're told about? But more importantly, why exactly are all these horrible things happening? Only time will tell. As far as everything to this point, I'm not sure what to think, in a good way. I'm loving the story, even though I'm confused half the time when things are happening. The gameplay, even though it's as simplest as it could possibly be, it's very good in what it does and executes. But something that is probably my favorite aspect to this point, and you may have kind of understand my feeling towards it, is the sound design of this game. It's unnerving, it somehow is able to be unsettling, and it's all wonderful in the worst way possible. It's mastered the design of both making me feel like I'm John himself, but also knows when to cut off all of its sounds to make me lock in on the particular area and make me feel the most on edge I have probably ever been in my whole life. Or one of the moments that I've ever been in my whole life. This is truly a horrible time in such a good way. Chapter 3, Part 1, The Clinic. The final chapter into this fun and wonderful experience starts like this. We start off from the beginning, from the point where this whole journey, or wild journey, has begun, where we tried to perform the first exorcism on Amy. Going down memory lane isn't fun. In fact, it's still creepy as it was before knowing all the information we do now. However, it was all just a dream, or more so a memory about the situation at hand. We wake up and learn of the Sabbath, but also learn the twins are being involved into the reincarnation of a demon named Malthus. However, another note from Father Garcia makes the situation worse, that he can't locate the twins and wants us to go back to the clinic where Amy worked, but he is still looking into finding the place where they're planning to summon this, or have the ceremony at. Looking around John's home, nothing really stands out besides the door with 1,000 crosses on it, but the most odd part about this whole thing, or this whole beginning part, is the neighborhood. I went to look around and both my neighbors are watching TV, but they are watching the same thing, and they're both memorized by it, which is very odd. But at the same time, I feel like odd is something normal now, to say the least. We head to the clinic, and you can tell this isn't a well-off place and seems to have trouble written all around it. Getting in isn't a problem, but finding a first note here alludes that this place had a lot under the table things happening. But once again, Gary's name pops back up in this note. Then another note we find in the next room backs up the theory that this place was doing things under the table, or doing things illegally, by just stuff talking about how pills aren't working in IVs. Then in another room that gets even more worse by seeing ultrasounds, and they slowly get worse and worse within 3 pictures. After finding the crowbar and hitting into the back of the room that's all boarded up, we get a nice little jump scare that set me nearly out of my seat. They have done things in like an easy manner to kind of ease you into like these little pop-ups or scares where you have time to anticipate it. But this was like the first time where I nearly was shocked by what was happening. Yeah, you could point out, well, that's kind of dumb of you because look at where you're in. And yeah, you do have a point, but still, there was nothing leading up to this particular moment, which is a good thing. I enjoyed it, even though I almost peed myself. Then I would say that this area is probably a boss area, because even though we don't fight this demon, we are trying to get away without being seen by it, whatever it is exactly. The cop that we left outside saves us, but before leaving, I check for the thing again, and it's gone. Great. Wonderful. I love it. Then as we leave, the thing attacks us. However, something I noticed that is somewhat more worrisome is that these things hurt physically as well. Going back to that spider thing, or the chupacabra, or as we know now was Michael at the end of chapter 1, is that some of these things are still living people to an extent, or part of them is still alive in these creatures. So who exactly is inside this thing? Beating this, or better yet killing this thing, leads us outside, where the cop car is on fire, and he yells at the people who we assumed did this. He calls them hippies and chases after them, but after we follow in the direction that he went, we see that, well, these hippies had hands. And then more so looking back over this footage, I noticed that they are in red outlines. And if you notice, the characters that have had red outlines, more or less, tend to be people from this cult thing that has been going around. It's one of those things where I didn't really notice it my first playthrough of this, but looking over the footage to kind of script this stuff out, I noticed it this time around. So it's kind of cool to look back on this stuff and even now kind of draw conclusions to things that you don't in that time frame of when you're actually playing. After leaving the area, we are right back to where the exorcism of Amy. We recite our passages to help Father Garcia, then Amy's parents come to check on their other daughter, and who could really blame them because we are doing an exorcism on said daughter. Amy calls out to them, but Father Garcia wants us to take them away from the area. Once we drop them off, however, is when we notice that Father failed, and the exorcism of Amy becomes the task that we are to handle with. But before that happens, we wake up, and now there's only 2 days left before the Sabbath. Now, before we continue with the other parts of chapter 3 of this, I'm going to have a somewhat little break here before we continue. First, like I said, and I've kind of alluded to a lot during this retelling, I am telling you all about my experience through my first playthrough, and my thoughts and feelings of it, and what I think, what I'm trying to express to you, what I'm thinking during that time, and even concluding the stuff like post-game reviews or like thoughts and theories and stuff like that, dialogue added here and there. And the reason I'm kind of rehashing this is because it's kind of important to note that I have missed things a lot during this first playthrough. And that's just me going off the videos and some other stuff that I've seen of other people talking about Faith, the Unholy Trinity after I've originally played it. But the other reason why I'm bringing this up yet again, and I'm sorry if it annoys you, it's more so important for me to reestablish this point because of the next part I'm going to be talking about. Because it was probably the most scariest part and the most scared I have ever been playing a video game. Till this point, my sessions of this game for like chapter 1 and 2, give or take, were about an hour and a half a piece. Chapter 3 is a longer session, but that's because it is a very big chapter, and that's why I'm dividing it up into parts here, so that way you can go through and look at parts that you may find interesting to you. However, this part that's coming up takes probably about 60% of the runtime in my chapter 3 experience. And you will see as to why that is, and through my reasoning behind as I go through this chapter. And also give you some more context about certain things that I personally did during that chapter that you may think to yourself, wow, this dude is a real idiot. And spoiler alert, yes I am. And I hope that kind of holds me in a better light. It probably won't. So, without a further ado, but this also kind of proves that I'm a huge wuss. So without a further ado, let's continue to the chapter 3, part 2. Chapter 3, part 2. The apartments. Once again, we're back home, but this time, a new note, but this time from someone named Lisa. Lisa's note is small, but tells us a lot. Then following up on that is a note from Father Garcia that they may be using this apartment complex to summon Malthus. Before heading there, I once again check on my neighbors, and, well, they're still watching TV together, but it's something different this time. But they're still mesmerized by whatever it is that is playing on screen. Off the jump, I take a look around, and you can already tell something isn't right about the situation in this whole place here. From the sound design to just how things are left, something is very wrong with this apartment. We find another note from Lisa, but it's addressed to Mr. Ward, which I'm assuming is the apartment manager / owner of this place. It seems Lisa herself is trying to buy time till we are able to get to her, or at least that's how I see it. After being an idiot for a bit, trying to figure out how this layout of this apartment complex worked in this game, I find out what floor Lisa is on, and then trying to get to Lisa's floor, I found a note, and this is where my nightmare truly begins for this part. With the note, and finding out Lisa's room is locked, it seemed like I had no choice but to take on the challenge that the game wants me to, thus beginning my hellscape of a spiral. The first floor offered nothing, but the last door on the second offers some insight to what happened here, or more so, more info on the cult. And then there was another mention of Gary as well. This guy is just everywhere, isn't he? Floor 3, the last door on it, has a whole lot going on with it. There's a whole lot of blood leading towards the door, and a TV just left on, but before leaving, the TV changes for a split second, but I didn't catch it at the time, of see who it was, but looking back on it, it was Amy. The music has now changed a bit, or more so, the sound design has. It has added this like thud sound to the game that makes it sound like there's something always behind me, or it's right next to me, which is both very terrifying if you can't tell, but also it makes me feel that the stakes have risen a lot here. Floor 4 had nothing for it, but getting to floor 5, I unlock Lisa's door to an unruly sight. At this point, I thought I was too late. Blood on the floor and a seal blocking my path to the next room. I mean, if you looked at this, you pretty think, like I did, that, yep, we are cooked here and we failed Lisa. However, we were able to get to the next room and we get some clues. But more importantly than that, we find in the next a new key, but another note. Complaining about the note, really contemplating the new note when we first got to floor 5 and this one, I knew my foot journey had to continue upwards, but I was also left with a pit in my stomach. For some reasons, this note leaves me more complexed because of the way it ends. Remember, Gary loves you. This note made me feel that it was left on purpose, specifically for me. And I think at this time, the first one in real time as events are happening to what we are doing in that moment. But the most glaring part of this was this part, that Gary knows I'm here and he's messing with me. Moving to floor 6, I see that things are a lot different here. Candles and walls are melting. Oh, and not to mention the lovely picture left in front of the elevator. Called, would you look at that? Elevator Friend. Hey, at least he got a nice name from Timmy, cause that sure as hell makes this a whole lot better, right? At least the name makes everything so much better. Going to, or well, trying to get to floor 7, I'm told that there is no floor 7. Now, I do know that there is like superstitions about the 13th floor for like hotels and apartments and so on and so forth. You don't go to those levels because, well, no matter what, those floors are believed to be haunted or cursed. So the 7th floor to be closed off completely had me thinking if this could be related to the 7 sins at the time. But getting back into the elevator after finding the amazing picture, I tried to go to the 7th floor, but are having some issues to say the least. But nonetheless, we skip floor 7 for now and go to floor 8. We get another note of Tiffany berating the cult to save Lisa. But now we have to try and save both of them. That's if I'm not too late to do so. At the other side of this floor, there's a nice note, or well, letter, but right after that, we are told there is a 7th floor, which is very contradictory what we just saw earlier. But instead, I go to floor 9. I find a note in a pumpkin about a Halloween party, but that their kid is having a new imaginary friend. It wouldn't have been Timmy, right, who told us about his elevator friend, would it? Floor 10, on the last door before we go in, we're greeted with a sign about sacrificing what we cling to. And with entering the room, we are shown how to use the laundry chute. Now, not only is this room sound design very off-putting, but we are completing everything that Gary wants us to do. We will play his game, but at the cost of us losing the thing that has been keeping us safe this whole time, and has been keeping my sanity in check. We let the cross go into the laundry chute, and this is where the real fun truly begins. Before the chute, there was no one on the CCTV, but now there is, and they are covered in blood. And leaving the room, we are met with the creature that we assume is Elevator Friend, but we can't get past him, nor can they hurt us, at least for now. Now, as you may have remembered, or I hope you remembered, about that little segment we just talked about, you know, hoping you all see me in a good light here. This is where you all were about to witness, or going to witness, me borderline go insane. Because the one thing that has been protecting me throughout this whole game is gone. 2, the sound design is so good here, in such the worst way possible. It has started to mess with me a lot, especially since we've entered this apartment complex, the sound of it making seem like something's always behind me, and now there is something here, and we know it's here. And 3, the most damning thing of it all is that we have been playing Gary's game, and we are still playing his game, and it's all going according to his plans. So everything about this place is the worst thing imaginable. It is awful. I hated it, and I still hate it, but it is insane of what this game has done to me right here, right now. I go to floor 7, and this is the worst thing I do possibly all games at this point. And I meet Timmy. Seeing that note right after leaving the elevator put me in fight or flight mode. Or well, more flight than anything, because I don't want to be here. I don't want to deal with this. I hate this. Please let me out of here as quick as possible. I was lucky to find a camera which turns or cuts power out and on when you flash it, and it was my only source of light in this whole segment. But it takes a while for it to charge up, so you only get a certain amount of light for a very brief period of time, and you have to memorize the layout of the area to keep proceeding forward. So you can kind of understand in this area or this section is where I panicked a hell of a lot. The first floor down, I go back into the blood trail room, but now the door is open, but it leads back to an attic where Amy was. But that quickly changes, but because I'm so on edge at this point, I just book it through here and just don't even pay attention to anything, and I'm just trying to get out as quick as possible. But that doesn't help because I almost flew out of my chair a couple points here, because what in the world is that? What is happening here? What did we get ourselves into? Seeing that the cult has definitely completed what they needed to do, all that was left was for me to confirm it all, which I would have just said yeah and then jump out a window, but nonetheless, here we are. I get back to the room with the sword and head down the stairs, only to be shortly met with this again and again and again and once again till it starts following me. Getting through the cool maze that totally caused me not to panic and continue on my merry way leads me back into the hallway and to try to keep going down to what I assume is the basement of this apartment complex. And getting down there was no problem, but knowing that there are possibly 2 things now following me is unnerving. But we are lucky enough to get my cross back, and some relief and pleasure happen, and I'm just so happy to have got my items back. And then the lights also come back on, which helps a tremendous amount, trust me. Going into the next room, I exercise a head that breaks a part of Lisa's seal. However, after reading the note beside it, it sends a chill down my spine. Tiffany completed the ritual, but also threatened Gary in her final moments. Something that bothers me more is that there is a lot of blood here, and I mean a lot. But going up the stairs, I'm once again reminded that I need to be on guard at all times in this place. Because now the monster thing got me, and it made me become it, at least for a bit, which is, again, another one of those weird interval things that happen during this game. Assuming I have everything I need now to complete this apartment complex segment, or at least I'm hoping so, I began my journey to the room with the sword. It more or less reacts to my steps. Going back into the room and exercising an eye on the wall gives me a note that something was placed here, but more so, Gary is the apartment manager by the sound of it, and the way the letter reads, he has been planning this for who knows how long to this point. Getting back into the sword room, I exercised it, and thus the seal to Lisa's room is broken. Not wanting to spend another second here, I decide I will take the elevator up to Lisa's room, and face the consequences of my actions later down the road. Getting into Lisa's room, I find Lisa alive, surprisingly, or so I assumed. The boss battle starts, and what I thought to be a walk in the park becomes a absolute horrendous choice by me. I exorcised the demon inside of Lisa, but I failed to get it out of me, and in turn, I killed Lisa. The devil made me do it. It's something you don't want to hear your priest say at all. Now, I assumed that I would get a redo, like a mission failed type thing, you know, where you get to restart your failed point or your failed checkpoint, and you can retry this segment again. That doesn't happen. I failed here. All of the effort I put into this area, all the panic I had, all the damn near heart attacks I had, it was all for nothing. I killed Lisa, and I had to deal with that fact for the rest of the game. It also sent a reminder to me that this game is very unforgiving, and that I need to try and be better, because if not, everything that I've done to this point will and would be for nothing. Heading back to where we go back home, we are returned once again to the Amy exorcism. See, a wonderful creature posting in the corner and something we haven't seen before. I just let it be. Going upstairs we notice the Martins are nowhere to be seen, which is the worst thing to happen at all times. I travel back to the mirror from chapter 1 and see a creature, but it runs away right as I hold up my cross. I also see Bob's glasses. Heading upstairs into the attic, I come face to face with Amy. This time, though, Amy brings up Meredith. To this point, Meredith hasn't really been mentioned, but it means a lot to John. Amy shows up, she's the dominant one here, and she holds the power here. But then, right before things start, we wake up, once again, with one day left before the Sabbath. Chapter 3, Part 2 was a nightmare for me, to say the least. To this point, we have encountered unreal sights, audio that really sets me off, and images that are just not right or in the right state of mind that you could ever think of. But this was the first time where I kind of felt like I can't continue to play this. The experience I had here was some of the worst feelings I've ever felt playing a game, from a sound design standpoint, but also due to my own failure. And that's a great thing. I think it does a lot and should be done more in games where these things don't go your way. And when they don't, you shouldn't get like a restart point. At least in video games that are based more semi-realistic, not every game needs this particular feature. It makes me to try and be better with the game even though I don't get to the point that I wanted to. But also the way this game has been playing, it fits the narrative or the gameplay mechanic of it fits so well here. I really wish you all could hear my live audio for this, but it was mainly me cussing and saying things that just don't make sense, like a bunch of gibberish. I sounded like a fish at most part that jumped out of water gasping for air, to be honest with you. All you would hear is just me going probably like 95% of the time. Overall though, again, Faith proves yet again that this horror game isn't something to be messing around with. And you need to be ready for almost everything and anything that may come your way or may peer its head around any lovely corner. Because if you're not, you will face the consequences of your own failure, your own actions, but more importantly, your own sanity. Chapter 3, Part 3, The Standoff. We do what is normal for us now. We go into our living room where we are greeted with another note from Father Garcia. Now it's a daycare that's in trouble. The children are involved with this issue. As if children haven't been the greatest part of this whole series or this whole game, we are now getting a full-fledged out section just for them. Before heading out, I once again check on my neighbors, still watching TV, but this time it's the symbols that are around or showing on their TV and their pentagrams that the cult has been using. Are we really too late to save everyone? Is this the consequences of all my failed actions through this game? Getting to the daycare, we notice a cop going by, but more so when we move towards that block that it's a standoff in front of the building. This is it. I assume all roads have led to this very moment. Like any normal day, Gary leaves us a cool note, and getting into the daycare is, well, getting in is easy. It's when we get inside that's a little interesting. The very first picture pretty much sets the tone of what is happening and kind of shows us what situation we are in right now. I will say, however, this puzzle was one of the more fun ones I had once I was able to piece the poem and my surroundings together and figure it out. Did it take a while? Yes. Yes, it did. Will I say how long it took me? No. No, I won't, because that doesn't matter. I will say, though, never do what I do, because I wanted to see what would happen if I go out the front door. Because, well, I thought the cops would be cool with that. You know, an innocent civilian just exiting a building, holding their hands up. But they weren't really cool with that at all. They lit me up like it was the 4th of July. Funny enough, saying I got a gun while it being a cross is a little ironic, isn't it? But I digress from that. Once we complete the puzzle, it opens a staircase to the basement that gives me all I need to know within the few seconds. This is where it lives. Now for this particular section of the game, as much as I've enjoyed giving everyone my step-by-step thoughts and my process of how I was doing things, nothing of big really happens here, or of note really happens. This is the most gameplay part of the game by a long shot. It has puzzles, boss battles, all in it. Saying that this part took a while would be putting it in a nice way. However, there are some notes that are relevant. Also, these are some of the more highlighted moments from this section. The first being that this first cutscene where we get stabbed. This, in my opinion, was sort of a look back into John's life to this point, but more so the thing that is being summoned is taking over, and we are losing the battle. Or we're losing the John we were supposed to be. We do wake up once more in the attic of Amy's house, but knowing what we know from everything we failed, we find Amy's mom passed away in a horrible way, which we kind of anticipated. We then head back downstairs to Amy once again reminding us we failed and almost forcing us back up into the hell pit we are in. A lot more battles happen, a lot more puzzles happen, and then later we break the seal that is in the middle of the woods to a door. After confirming everything, we go through that door and we're told about opening the door to hell. Then we finally meet the twins. But this is cut short because the man in red once again stops us in our tracks. We pray and we meet this figure in white, which I assumed is God. John and God's conversation is a little off, even though I know very little of religion. This convo isn't one I would assume that would happen between a priest and God. We're then shown that John leaves the Martin's house when he failed the first time. Then we wake up yet again, and we meet the person in red, who tells us that he is Gary. The one that's been pulling all the strings, the one who has been behind it all. It is finally our confrontation with him. He allows us 3 questions, which allows us to kind of nitpick or really try to narrow down what we want to know at this particular time. I wanted to learn more about Gary, which in turn he just tells us that he was a normal person, just getting the world ready for the Antichrist. Which, okay, that as shocking as it is, it's not really that far-fetched at this point, I feel like. And I guess, yeah, some normal person you really turn out to be, huh, Gary? I didn't ask about the twins, which he tells us that they are an illusion, which has been a thought plaguing my mind for quite a while, to be honest with you, because they aren't really mentioned a whole lot besides a few points here and there. But the most pivotal point about the twins themselves that made me question their existence was the whole Martin house situation through the game. There isn't any pictures of them, nor is there any mention of them at all during the failed retelling of the exorcism. It had plagued my mind since probably the end of chapter 2, but the reason why I haven't said it or mentioned it at any point was because there was no confirmation for it. For all we know, maybe they did exist, or maybe they were just illusions of Amy that were mentioned for notes of hers. Maybe we misinterpret the way the notes were being read. But nope, they were actually an illusion of John's. The last question I do ask is about Amy. From the failed exorcism, she has, and still is, the most recurring thing throughout this whole story. So it was only natural I asked about her. Gary confirms that she was supposed to be the vessel for the second death. But as he talks, the dialogue says victim, which is a very cool note to do or mention during this segment. Which is kind of ironic also, because I feel that everyone, including Amy, has been a victim to Gary's crazy plan and crazy game that he's been doing this whole time. He has been playing with us, but not only messing with us and messing with everyone around us, we have fallen into this big trap that just took so many people down with it. Gary does tell us once again to complete our, quote, journey. But this world changes to despair. But this word changes to despair. That Amy will be his once again. Which then opens another question. Amy's attached to us. And if she is, how long has this been happening? We can assume that she's been attached to John since the failed exorcism. Or was it some other time that hasn't been mentioned yet? Now, at this moment, we all have been waiting for. The boss battle between us and Gary happens. This one is no joke. In fact, I had a lot of fun doing this one because it offered a good challenge to it. And yes, I failed a good amount still when it's all said and done, but it was still a good time because it allows us to use everything that we've learned about this game in this boss battle. And like I said, when it's all said and done, I did win. Or well, Father Garcia helps us beat Gary. Or well, he gives him a new hole, to put it nicely. Or at least a few of them in him. Teaming up with Father Garcia, I learned that I have missed something to break the main seal here. But after a quick look around and this purple thing sticking out like a sore thumb, I was able to bring it down and stop demons coming into our world. After beating it, we head outside to a pretty basically, no other way to really say this, a bloodbath. And we head towards Father Garcia's car. John's broken. He listens to Father Garcia about the Holy Trinity not being fulfilled and that it isn't stopped. So he recruits John to help. And like any normal person, even me included, I don't think John is the right person for this job. And to be frank, he needs time for himself. And to be honest, who can really blame him? We have gone through so much torment. We have seen things beyond our imagination. Things that we thought were there aren't there. We are bittered and we are destroyed as a character and as a person, or at least John is. And like I said, who could really blame him, right? For wanting to take a step back and try to regather himself and rethink about the situation that he's been handled, or the situation he's been in for quite a while now. Well, Father Garcia doesn't care what we want to do. We are helping him with this mission whether we want to or not. Driving away from it all, the credits roll, and thus, my unnerving experience with Faith the Unholy Trinity comes to a close, with getting ending 1, a new purpose, and boy, what a story this was. Okay, conclusion time. Okay, so what an all-around experience this was for me. As you saw through my playthrough, lots and lots of lows here. However, this doesn't take away from the outstanding job this game did at telling its story. Yes, and I want to make this very blatantly clear. Yes, I know I missed a lot during my first playthrough, but looking back on it now, I'm sort of glad I did miss things. It's kind of odd, right? I think it's because I love the effort here to really showcase a story more than what it is on a surface level. There is a lot, and I mean a lot, that you can unpack here with some religious themes, notes, and stuff that I can't even begin to describe to you all of what they may mean, because it's knowledge that I lack in, or it's an area that I lack severely in as well. And I may have made points along the way here as well that may be wrong as well. Maybe my interpretation of certain things is wrong when it's meant to be a certain way. But I think that opens up so much more dialogue for the game that's the reason why I think Faith the Unholy Trinity was so good. And at the end of the day, I do think this game is truly one of the more scarier horror games I've had the opportunity of playing. And there are a handful of reasons why it's notably like this. For number one, and the most obvious factor, which is something you guys won't hear during this, it's the sound design of the game. The way the music and the way characters talk, and even the smallest details throughout the game of noise making, make this thing so horrific to play. It sounds at times there's things behind me. The music plays and doesn't play at pivotal moments, or moments where you have to really lock in and think about what you're doing, or you will mess up. And even the characters talking in this 8-bit noise thing, it's unnerving, it's unsettling, and it's just so dang wonderful. It makes you think that, is there a jump scare about to happen? Am I about to see a disinformed figure? Am I going to read another horrific note? Are there going to be pictures of horrifying things? Or things that would just make me sick to my stomach? It's just so good of how it depicts these things. And yes, as much as I hated some of those horrific things, I would be lying to you if I was going to say it wasn't some of the best stuff I have experienced playing a horror game. Then there's also John. He's a good protagonist, and I'm kind of a sucker for a protagonist that we can't really trust. Because at the beginning of chapter 1, I'm thinking, oh, John's this really good character. He's like, you think of Priest, usually from a normal outside look, or from a normal perspective look from my point of view, you think of Priest of being good people. John is pretty much, he is a semi-good person, but he has done a lot of wrong. And having a protagonist that we can't fully trust is a very good, in my opinion, a very good way to do this particular story. And to be completely fair, I kind of make John worse through my playthrough because of all the mistakes I end up doing. But even without that, John is still a person who has a lot of self-guilt, and we see him try and become a better person. Whether or not at the end of the day that happens, we haven't seen it, but that may be for you all to find out during your own playthroughs. Again, The reason why I won't go into a lot of details here or really eradicate or go over everything that I missed is because I truly believe you all should try this game out. But you may want to play some relaxing music in the background to really help you get going if you hate horror. Or you can play in complete darkness. That is completely up to you. Whatever your tolerance is, more power to you. I won't forget Faith, the Unholy Trinity, and I think it will be a horror game that should leave an impact on horror games as a whole moving forward. Again, it has layers of info that I haven't touched on here because there are so many good handful of themes here that I'm just not an expert in to really talk to you all about it. But my best thing to do here is try to get you all to play it because you all may get something completely out of it in a different way than what I did. And another reason why I won't cover things or why this video is completely different than the normal outlook of my usual type of stuff here is because it's not something I'm very knowledgeable in, and I think I've already stated this like once or twice in this video, but I don't want to say something and it comes off the wrong way. And then it's this topics, especially when it comes to religion, like I've said, it isn't my strong suit. And yes, I could delve into researching topics and spend time and come back here and give you all what each detail means to you. But religion is such a hard topic to cover without, I feel, hurting someone, especially when me as a person isn't knowledgeable enough in it to really grasp everything that there is to it. And then quite frankly, there's a lot to unpack here that I don't think I can do it justice my own. I can give you all my thoughts and opinions like I've done throughout here, but if you play it, you may come out with a different outlook on it, which I think is a wonderful thing. I don't think a lot of games really give you that opportunity where if I play it, I have this opinion. If you play it, you have that opinion. Cause yeah, at a surface level, it's about a priest that lost his way and is stuck at ending one on a never-ending hell or a never-ending cycle to the day he dies. But when you get past that surface level aspect, there's a lot of paths in the story, a lot of topics you can go down because that's how much details and how many layers there are here in this game. It's a lot to unpack, and I truly believe if you're capable of playing it, if you have the opportunity to do so, check out Faith, the Unholy Trinity. This is the end of the video, and yes, this is something new. This is kind of going to be like a test pilot of sorts for games that I really like, but I don't think I can do justice on with talking about it with everything the game has to offer, just like Faith here. There's lots of layers, like I've said, that I just can't do justice. But there are also going to be times where I loved or really enjoyed a game, and I have a lot of thoughts and feelings that I may just want to share with you all. So this will be a good test pilot to see how it turns out, whether it does good or not. But I still kind of want to keep this idea of just talking about if I really like something, like a game, I may make another video like this where I just go across like my specific playthrough, but it may branch out into other videos and stuff like that. Unfortunately for Faith here, this is probably the only time this video or a video from the game will touch the channel because like I've said multiple times in this conclusion, there's a lot I can't talk on because I'm not knowledgeable enough to do so. But how in between these videos would come out, I can't say for you. It really is just up in the air. But nonetheless, I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, maybe leave a like, comment, or subscribe. I would appreciate it dearly. And just remember, stretch, drink your water, get your steps in, check your posture, and always remember you're important. Until the next one, I will see you all later.